When I was a kid, I used to love watching the Olympics on TV. The athletes were like superheroes to me, powerful and determined and fearless. I assumed that they were all just brimming with self-confidence and that once you got to that level, all of your doubt just disappeared. Now, I was just a kid who loved the sport of curling, and becoming an Olympian seemed like an impossible dream, but that didn't stop me from trying. I was always driven by setting and achieving big goals, and I used to think that if I just achieved my goals, then I'd finally feel like I was enough. That if I just became an Olympian, that if I just won a gold medal, then that negative voice inside my head would be silenced and I'd be happy and fulfilled and complete. Well, after years of training and against the odds, it actually happened. I became an Olympian. But it was in that moment that I realized something I never expected. That your inner critic doesn't vanish, and maybe it even gets louder. The stakes are higher, and the expectations are greater, and that little voice we all have inside that whispers, "You're not good enough," it doesn't go away. Have you ever told yourself that you'd finally be happy once you reach the next milestone? Once you got the promotion, or you bought the dream house, or you hit that personal best you were chasing? The thing is, even when we achieve our goals, that joyful feeling we're searching for doesn't always come, or if it does, it can be fleeting. A few moments of happiness and a little celebration, but then we move the goalposts and we're back to chasing again. I know this because I lived it. At the 2018 Olympics, my team was ranked number 1 in the world. We were expected to win a medal, but instead, we missed the playoffs. I'll never forget the headline the next day in the Globe and Mail. It said, "Canada's Olympic women's curling team will be remembered for one thing: dropping the curling ball." It was devastating, and that headline validated everything my inner critic had been saying. That you had a chance and you blew it, and you're a failure and now everybody knows it. And even when my team did win big events, that critical voice never really went away. I remember standing on top of the World Championship podium. I had a gold medal around my neck, and I was waiting to just feel overcome with joy. But what I really felt was relief. Relief that we didn't fail, and relief that we'd done the thing everyone had expected us to do, and relief that maybe I could rest a little bit, at least until the next challenge. So eventually I had to ask myself, what's the point if you can't even enjoy it? Now, that question led me on a journey to try and find more joy in the process. We hear this phrase all the time, enjoy the journey. And it's such a cliche, but what if it's actually the key to quieting your inner critic? Now, what I've learned is joy isn't something that you earn when you complete your to-do list, and it's not a reward for getting everything right. It's actually a mindset and a choice. And joy is not constant happiness, and it's not about putting on a smile and pretending everything's perfect. Joy is found in moments of presence and connection, and it lives in the everyday, but we have to notice it. So today I'd like to share with you 3 tools that I've used to turn down the volume on my own inner critic and find a little more joy. The first one is to talk to yourself like a teammate. So let's just take a step back for a second, and I want you to think about your own inner critic. What does it sound like when it's at its worst? What does it say to you? Maybe it sounds a little bit like mine, who says things like, "You're not doing enough. You don't belong here. You're just going to mess that up again." You see, our brains are wired for survival, not happiness, so we fixate on what went wrong. But what if we could change that voice from critical to constructive? My sports psychologist once asked me if I would feel proud if my inner monologue were played for an arena full of fans. You can probably imagine, with all the negative things that I say to myself during a game, I felt a little bit mortified. I used to think it was the mark of a high performer to be hard on myself, but I was starting to see it was actually a liability. So we worked on changing that and changing my critical inner voice to a softer, kinder one. He asked me to think of a coach or teammate or a trusted friend. and to picture what they would say in their words, in their voice in my head, and to practice that until that kinder inner voice started to become my own. When I coach young athletes, I would never say, you better not miss that shot. I'd say something positive and constructive like, hey, you got this. Trust your process. The same way I'd want a coach to talk to me, so why is it so hard for us to speak to ourselves that way? Motivational self-talk can help with focus, performance, and confidence, and it even reduces anxiety. And that's true whether you're stepping onto the curling ice or into a boardroom or on a stage to deliver a speech, or really any other task. So let's all try this. The next time you catch yourself going down a negative self-talk spiral, just pause and ask yourself, would I say this out loud to someone I care about? And if not, what would a teammate or a coach say? Because your inner coach should be somebody you'd want on your team. Now, the second tool I use is to reframe success. In elite sport, success is often binary, win or lose, gold or failure, but that definition doesn't leave a lot of room for the in-between, and it's the same in life. We obsess over our outcomes, like the promotion, the spotless house, the Instagram-worthy photo. But what if success isn't just about the result? What if it's actually about how we're showing up? A few months ago, the #1 golfer in the world made headlines by asking a simple question at a press conference. What's the point? Scottie Scheffler articulated something that many of us wrestle with on a daily basis when we're caught up in these endless cycles of goal setting and achievement. He said, "This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from the sense of the deepest places of your heart." So reflecting on my own sense of fulfillment, I realized a lot of it comes from the work I put in and being on a journey towards something meaningful. So how do we find more enjoyment in that process? For starters, I began to ask myself a new set of questions, like, did I prepare the best I could? Was I a supportive teammate? Did I stay in the moment? And these are all things we can control. And when we define our success by our processes and not just our outcomes, it gives us space to feel proud even when things don't go to plan. A few years ago, I started a curling academy, and I've seen how early the inner critic shows up even in kids. They're already afraid to make mistakes, and they're basing their self-worth on their outcomes. So I try and show them and remind myself too that joy isn't a distraction from your performance, it's actually the path to it. So I've shared 2 tools so far, talking to yourself like a teammate and redefining success. And the third one I'd like to share is building a gratitude practice. So we've established it can be tempting to look for joy only in the big wins, but gratitude helps us see the good that's right here, right now, even when life's messy or difficult. And the science backs this up. The field of positive psychology shows us that a gratitude practice is central to mental well-being, resilience, and performance. So knowing this, a few years ago, I asked my husband to start a gratitude practice with me. That each night we would say aloud 3 things we're grateful for. Now, I will admit the first night it felt very cheesy and uncomfortable, but it quickly became a way for us to connect and reflect and wind down the day. But here's the thing. Gratitude is easy when life's going well. And the real power of this practice shows up when things are hard. I remember one night we were in a fight, and we were tired and frustrated, and I'm sure the last thing either one of us was feeling was gratitude. So there we were in the dark, and eventually my husband said, "We didn't say our 3 things." And that made me pause and reflect. And then eventually I said, "I'm grateful we do this, even when we don't feel like it." It broke the ice and it got us talking again, and it didn't solve everything, but it reminded us that there's still love, even when things are hard. And that's the quiet power of this practice. Because gratitude doesn't require perfection, it just requires presence. And when you're in the present moment, you're not dwelling on the past and you're not stressing about the future. You're just seeing the good that's right here, right now. So let's all try it. Right now, what is one thing you're grateful for in this very moment? It could be something big like your health or your family, or it could be something small like that perfect cup of coffee you had this morning. Do you have your thing? Don't overthink it. That's it. That's gratitude, and that's presence, and that's the skill we're trying to train. I used to get so nervous before I played in big curling games. I'd wish I could just fast forward to the end and know the result, win or lose, it didn't matter. Until I decided that I wanted to enjoy the moment more. Pressure is a privilege, I would tell myself, and there's nowhere I'd rather be than right here, right now. I made the choice to rewrite my inner script, and I repeated it until I believed it, and that's a skill we all can use. So, do you remember that headline from the Olympics? This is how I would address it today using these 3 tools. First, I talk to myself like a teammate or a coach. I'd say, you did your best. You didn't get the result this week, and that is sports sometimes, but imagine if your 8-year-old self could see you now. You actually did it. You're an Olympian, and you should be so proud. Then, I'd reframe success. I'd take pride in the fact that I'd given my whole heart to the journey with no guarantee of the outcome. I'd reflect on all the ways I'd grown as a player and a person. And I'd remind myself that the results of one event, even one as significant as the Olympics, don't define my worth or my legacy, no matter what the headlines say. Thank you. And finally, I choose to feel grateful. Grateful for the love of my family and friends who are there for me no matter what, and grateful for the big support team who believed in my dream and helped me get to the Olympics. And grateful that I got to play the sport I loved and I'd reached the pinnacle. It can take some work, but in any given moment, we can catch our negative self-talk, shift our perspective, and choose to see what's there instead of what's missing. So I want you to know what I wish I'd known sooner, that joy is a mindset. You don't need to stand on top of the podium to experience joy, and you don't need to wait until everything's perfect to be proud of how you're showing up. Joy reminds us that we're more than our outcomes and that we're enough just as we are. Thank you.